One such company created to operate in the Tianjin port area was the Dongyang Bonded Port Ruihai International Logistics Company. It was formed in 2012 by two businessmen, Yu Jinwei, a Sinochem executive, and Dong Shenyang, a salesman. The latter of the two had connections within the port, namely from his father, who was the chief of police in the area. The two men set up their ownership of the company through other people to mask their involvement, but although on paper hidden, they were very much involved in pushing the company forward by any means possible. The company was to offer expedited customs and shipping for dangerous goods over the state-run entities by leaning on their connections within the industry. An 11-acre site was acquired next to a new vehicle storage area. It was a little too close to residential areas for storage of deadly chemicals at just 500 metres, well, at least in the opinion of the first consultant the company called in for an environmental impact assessment. Not so much of an issue, they just got another consultant to give them the paperwork they required. As a note here, the guidance was that the nearest housing should be at least 1 kilometre away, or twice the distance that it actually was. The company, although not granted a licence to store chemicals on site by February 2014, it did begin holding client stock regardless. It was only given a temporary permission to do so in May the same year, essentially working outside the law for the first few months of operation. The company leaned on its contacts to expedite shipments for customers. It would be great for business, attracting more and more clients, so much so that the warehouse site had to be expanded, doubling the amounts of chemicals allowed in their temporary license. Containers were stacked higher than allowed and stored improperly in a confusing, messy mix of interchanged shipments. Managers were not trained properly for their jobs, allowing poorly stored material and awful chemical handling practices to be widespread. Some of the chemicals that passed through the site were compressed and liquefied flammable gases, flammable liquids, flammable solids, materials that can spontaneously combust when in contact with water, including sulfur and calcium carbide. These chemicals are very important to know about, especially when dealing with firefighting activities. On top of the explosive stuff, the site moved toxic chemicals, such as sodium cyanide and corrosive products, the likes of formic acid, phosphoric acid, metacrylic acid, and even caustic soda.